Are you looking for a space where you will learn to improve your mental strength, emotional health, and heal your insecurities from the inside out? Take the first step to living a more meaningful life with the Better Me with Body by Bree podcast. I'm your host, Bree. I'm a certified personal trainer, entrepreneur, and mother of 3. I've helped empower thousands of women to take action through fitness, nutrition, meditation, personal development, and aligning thoughts with action. This podcast is for those who are ready to feel inspired and motivated to live a more purposeful life. Let's grow together. We were having a really hard time with our son Jameson and his behavioral issues. So I decided to hire a behavioral therapist, and I could not believe how quickly he changed. And it was all because of our parenting. Behavioral therapist Lori Abosch walked us through why children act certain ways and how we can help them meet their basic needs so they feel loved, safe, and secure. In doing this, we were able to connect on a deeper level, and Jameson's behavior changed almost immediately. I can't wait for you to learn from Lori and gain insight for your own family. Lori Abosch has a degree in Child and Adolescent Development and is the author of the book Change the Way You Look at Children and the Children You Look at Change. Lori is also the creator and facilitator of a dynamic parent education course, Unlocking the Mysteries of Childhood Behavior, and has been conducting classroom management workshops for schools since 2005. Her entire professional life has been dedicated to researching, understanding, and teaching the connection and the undeniable impact of primary emotional needs on all behavior relating to children. Let's get started. Lori, welcome to the podcast. I am so excited that you are on because you have been such a blessing to me and my family. I cannot thank you enough for what you've done for my kids, and I can't wait to share what you can do for all of the listeners and how you can help their children as well. So welcome.
Well, thank you, Bree, and thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate you sharing your story with your parent audience, because so many parents are living currently with the same situations that you are. They think it's a normal part of childhood, of development, and truly, as you have found out, you can have peace in your home. You can have cooperative children. You can have children who listen and that you just enjoy. And so I think this is a really important segment that you're having, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you. And so if you guys know, a lot of my listeners know that like Jameson has been a hard child. He's very sweet, but he's hard. And so my listeners know that if they follow me. And so I had been looking for a behavioral therapist to kind of help with Jameson just so that I knew how to parent him. And I found Lori. And I'm not kidding. She was like an answer to my prayers because I was doing everything wrong. And I remember our first consult together. She's like, I was telling you everything that was wrong with Jameson. And I'm like, he doesn't listen. He's disrespectful. He has no structure. And I'm just listing down and I'm like, and I've tried everything. I've tried taking his sugar out, the dyes out, all of this. And she's like, okay, do you do this, and this? And I'm like, yes. She's like, yeah, it's you. I'm
like, I think I was a little more gentle than that, but go ahead.
No, you were so good about it though. But it was so eye-opening to be like, oh, it's actually my patterns and my habits and how I'm parenting. And once we shifted that and you taught me all of those tools, I could not believe the difference in Jameson, not only Jameson, but Olivia too. It was like night and day. And I'm like, and even Adam was like, I cannot believe the change in energy in our home. Like it's so much more peaceful. It's so much more cooperative. And that's all thanks to you and your tools. So I just can't thank you enough.
Well, you're so welcome. And I'm sure that everybody is chomping at the bit to understand where the miracle came from.
Yes. And I think the confusion, I was going to say before you get started, the confusion is that there's so much out there. It's like you have positive parenting, you have love and logic, you have all of the like cooperative parenting, you have gentle parenting, and half the time it's just you trying to negotiate with your child the whole time. Like that's where I got stuck is I'm like, I want to be a loving, positive, happy parent, but I had kind of lost my authority where, like, I feel in this day and age, so many parents are just trying to negotiate with their child or trying to be like, oh, well, do you want to eat dinner? Like, it's okay if you don't want to eat dinner, and then they like rule
Yes.
your life.
Right, exactly. And now you understand how developmentally it goes against their natural growth, and that you are actually nurturing the very behavior that you would like to get rid of. So you're kind of working against yourself both in the developmental sense and in the behavioral sense. And that's what you came to understand. And I think, that is one. I want to distinguish myself from the other parenting experts and all the different books and styles that you can have. I call myself a parent educator, but I also do staff development trainings for teachers. And I actually have the same curriculum for teachers that I do for parents. And that's because I'm really not teaching a parenting approach. Really, what I'm doing is providing an understanding of development, specifically emotional development, and its impact on behavior. And when parents come to understand that, then all of a sudden they know which parenting approach works best for them, and they understand why different types of interactions and communications work or don't work for their children. And so that's kind of how I like to distinguish myself, to understand that I am not competing against any type of parenting approach. I am actually foundational.
Yes.
To make whatever approach you're using or whatever cultural beliefs and values that you have in your family to enhance them and to make it work in your favor.
Well, that's what was helpful for me because you were like, I was like, Jameson still wants me to get him dressed every day. And you're like, no, he's 5 years old. He developmentally can do that on his own. Like that's something that you can have him do on his own. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'll push harder for that. Things like that where you don't really know what as a parent, you're like, well, can they do this? I'm not sure. Are they developmentally ready? And even understanding my 2-year-old, you're like, she's not developmentally ready for that yet. So here's what you can do instead. That was so helpful.
Right. And that's where the clarity needs to be for all of parents. And really my foundation is focused on emotional development. And I focus on 6 different areas. I look at trust, a child's self-esteem, their identity as a boy, girl, son, daughter, student, and a friend. I look at autonomy, which is a child's ability to be independent, and then boundaries and self-control. And this is what parents need to understand, is that when a child is underdeveloped in one or more of those areas, 100% of the time, there will be behavior problems. The only difference will be it manifests differently from child to child, meaning it looks different. So, for example, a child who doesn't trust himself, the adults in his family, or the environment, there'll be behavior problems. Child with low self-esteem, behavior problems. A child who lacks self-control, obviously, behavior problems. On the flip side of that, the good news is when those emotional needs are met, which is what happened in your family, Bree, those behaviors, that emotional satisfaction turns into persistently appropriate behavior. So the behaviors that you don't want to see go away, and they go away permanently and organically because those needs are met. And also, too, when you reach that that emotional satisfactory state, that is the best time for your child to go learn in school. It is the best time for them to be physically active, and it's the best time for them to relate to another individual. So with their siblings, with their parents, with their peers. So what you learned, Bree, is that the way the 21st century parenting kind of worked against you is the 21st century parents, also known as the helicopter and lawnmower parents, they are a highly communicative group. They nurture individuality and they empower their children to speak up, to be able to negotiate, to be able to question authority. And all of these things are vital aspects of development, and children absolutely need these qualities as they get older and set out to be on their own. However, if we don't first develop listening skills first, then we will see this very resistant, combative behavior. So if you are always deferring to your children for what would you like to eat, what would you like to wear, what would you like to do today, in their minds, they are in charge, right? And not only are they too young to be in charge because they don't know what's best for them to eat. They don't know what's best for them to wear all the time. They don't know what's best for them to do on a daily basis. That's why I always joke. That's why God invented parents. You know, we have to be the decision makers for them, show them what good choices are, show them what healthy choices are, so that when they get older and are more capable of making those decisions, they can actually do so and do so in a sound way. So parents need to be, as you found out, more directional, more instructional in nature. So instead of saying, you know, what would you like to eat? Or are you ready to eat? Are you ready for a bath? Are you ready for bed? You would say it's time to eat. It's time for a bath, and it's time to go to bed. And then you actually would follow through. And through that structure, through that consistency and predictability, children not only feel a sense of security, which you definitely see in Jameson, but they also know what's coming next from a day-to-day basis in their environment and from the adults in the environment. And consequently, they can function independently, which is also what you're seeing in Jameson. So you created a structure where it's consistent and predictable for your kids, and also you set the expectations to your child's capability, meaning that your child can live up to your expectations instead of down, like you're dressing a 5-year-old kid who's capable of dressing himself, created regressive behavior. He lived down to the expectation, and you see this infantile, immature type behavior. But when you change that around, change the expectation, now you have a kid who's getting dressed, who is not only doing the chores that you ask him to do, but he's doing it now without being told, just to be a nice guy and being part of the family. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the transformation and how you executed all of that.
Yeah. So I think I'll give a little bit of background on like why I came to you, Lori, because then it helps with we can go through the 6 foundational steps that you helped us with, and then we can show how it helped so much with Jameson, because the 6 foundational steps that you taught, I had no idea that was linked to his behavior. I was just thinking, oh, he's so hard, but he's actually not. He's actually an amazing child. His needs in those 6 foundational steps weren't being met, like you said. So when I first came to Lori, it was because he didn't respect authority. So he would do whatever he wanted to do. He wouldn't do any responsibility in the home. So like you said, he was kind of reverting down. Like he wanted me to get him dressed, me to brush his teeth, me to help him, go to the bathroom, anything. He just kind of was relying on me to do everything. And then and then he had impulse issues, like impulse control, like he was lashing out of anger and started getting in trouble in school. And so when I was explaining all of this to Lori, it was so interesting how she was like, well, okay, let's look at this. Does Jameson struggle with self-confidence? And I was like, yes. And it was almost like you had a key to his brain. It was like, if he's doing these behaviors, she's like, do you have a structured schedule for him? And I was like, no, not really. Our mornings are pretty chaotic, and then you're like, okay, do you follow through when you give consequences, or do you say, one more time? Okay, if you do that one more time, Jameson, okay, really this time? I'm like, yeah, that's me. And then she was like, okay, what was the other one? Oh, do you give empty threats? And I'm like, yep, I do that. It was like literally the checklist that she went through, and I had done all of them. And it was empty threats, making excuses for their behavior, like, oh, they're just tired, or they just had a long day, or, they're just, school was, whatever. I always made excuses for Jameson's behavior. And so all of those things I was doing to try to combat the behavior instead of addressing what the 6 foundational keys are. So let's go through what those keys are and why they're important, and then we'll talk about how I implemented them with the results.
Right. So we talked a little bit first about trust, and the early foundation for trust is found through consistency and predictability, both in the primary adults in the home, that would be the parents; at school, that would be the teachers; and if let's say your kids play sports, then it would be their coach. And then 2, consistency and predictability in the environment. And in a home, that means your daily routine. So if you're getting your children up and ready for school, what is your morning routine? What's your routine at meal times? Is everybody supposed to sit at the table, or is everybody eating all over the house, kind of a thing? And what happens is that when routines especially are important because they are inherently consistent and predictable, which makes children feel safe because, again, they know what's coming next and they can function independently. So whenever a parent comes to me and says, my child's not listening, or my child's out of control, they won't go to bed, or they won't stay in bed, or they won't sit at the table, I know immediately it's really not the child's behavior, it's the environmental routine that needs to be shaped up. And then also too, parent response, like you talked about. Words and actions need to be aligned. So if you say something to your child, if you keep playing at the table, lunchtime is going to be over, then it just needs to be over. It really is as simple as that. If it becomes a series of warnings or empty threats, then that's what the child comes to trust, is that when my mommy or daddy says stop playing at the table, it means they're just going to tell me again to stop playing at the table, or they'll threaten to take my toys away. And it just becomes a routine. Mm-hmm. So that is the importance and the early foundation for trust. And it's also a way to build listening skills, because that is how in those structures, you are more directional in nature. Instead of asking, you are telling in a gentle way, but you are telling, and then your kids learn to function in that structure independently. And then later on, you can start to offer simple choices once they have listening down. After that is self-esteem. And self-esteem, a lot of people think is you either have it or you don't. It's high or it's low. And really, self-esteem encompasses 3 different areas. There's our intellectual self-esteem, our physical self-esteem, and our social self-esteem. And for children and adults, self-esteem actually varies in those 3 different areas. Like a very highly academic, intelligent child is probably always going to be confident inside the classroom. However, maybe put that child in a large social situation, and there might be some insecurity and even awkwardness. Same is true of an athlete, on the playing field, on any playing field, super confident, even if it's a new sport, but maybe in the classroom, a little more quiet, more reserved, a little more humble. So that's true for all of us. And then identity has to do, again, with how we help to shape and define who our children are as individuals. And the best way to do that is through expectations. And I think of expectations as like your child's job description. So at mealtime, what is your child's job? What are the expectations? What do you expect them to do? And if you are clear about those expectations and help practice those expectations with your kids so that they know how to execute them, then your child will be competent in every transition in your house. Like if it's homework time, there should be a little homework station. Homework should not be done either in the bed or on the couch or at the kitchen table. There should be one workstation, and there should be an expectation that your child not only does the work, but if there's a struggle, to ask and to be calm about it, and also to have the right attitude about it, because children need to understand that their homework time, their schoolwork is a priority, and that once it's done and done in the right way and with the right attitude, then the discretionary time, their free time, can happen. And that's how you start to shape kind of the son, daughter, student type identity in your home, is through those expectations during those different routines and transitions in your home. Autonomy is about that independence part, and nurturing independence has to do with relating to your children in a way that promotes independence as opposed to dependence. And a lot of times, especially parents today, the overprotective ones, when the minute their child starts struggling with something and getting a little frustrated, they want to jump in, they want to swoop in and save them. And the truth is they need to allow a little bit of time to let them figure it out, be it them tying their shoes or struggling a little bit if they're learning their multiplication tables. Let them kind of struggle and try different ways to work it out on their own so that they can develop one, self-efficacy skills, and then also a sense of achievement. That's the most important thing. If we're always,
oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah. If we are swooping in on our children to save them from frustration, Bree, you can talk about what happens with that.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say that was huge for Jameson, because when you were like, he has low self-esteem because you
Right.
don't let him fail. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, how could that be? But when you explained it, it all made sense and was so clear that he builds confidence by doing hard things. And so I started letting him, have those natural consequences. And then when he overcame them, he was so proud of himself and he had that confidence. And I'm like, oh, I see it. Like you are slowly building yourself up because you're doing hard things that parents always just want to rescue, so that they don't ever feel that. And so they never get the confidence. Then they have low self-esteem.
Right. The intention, and I want to make that clear because a lot of times parents feel guilty when they have this, when I say these things, then they feel guilty for doing it. But the intention is good. Parents want their kids to feel good, to be happy, to not ever feel rejected or hurt in any kind of way. In an ideal world, that's a beautiful thing. But the truth is, life doesn't work in a bubble like that. And the only way that children learn to overcome struggle and to have a sense of wanting, of other things, of goals in life is through this struggle of getting over obstacles. Because the truth is, it's easy to feel good about things that we are good at, that we are capable of. But when we run into an obstacle, we struggle and we overcome something that we never thought we could, or we achieve something that we never thought we could. In the self-esteem realm, that is something that sticks with you forever and that you use to be more motivated to maintain and to set and accomplish certain goals into the future.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you did for Jameson, because he wasn't feeling good about himself because you were doing for him what he was capable of doing for himself.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And I wanted to say, comment, because I'll forget, but as you're going through them, I'll kind of comment how we implemented it with Jameson, because the trust thing was another huge shift in him. Was like, he started, do you know what he actually said was, Olivia, you better listen to mom, because she actually does it now.
Oh my.
Like, he knew. He said that to her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my children know. Like, it was sad because one time he wasn't listening, and I said, we're all going to get ice cream. I did what you told me to do. We were all going to get ice cream, and I was like, now this is how we behave in this ice cream store. And if we run around and be crazy, we don't get ice cream, because you need to learn how we act in an ice cream store, and if you're respectful, then you get ice cream. And what did he do? First thing he did, right when we got in, started running around, being crazy. And Adam looks at me, he's like, you better follow through. And I'm like, oh, it was the hardest thing, but I followed through. Everyone got an ice cream but Jameson. And from then on, the next 2 days, he listened to every single thing I said, because he was like, oh, she's serious. Like, when she says it, she's serious. Like, it hurt me in the moment, but then he's like, started to trust that when I say that, I mean it. And he started listening better. And then with the whole trust with the schedule, I noticed the biggest difference when I made a schedule in the morning. So we wake up at the same time every day. He knows I lay his clothes out. He knows he can get himself dressed now, and he likes it. He feels proud of himself that he's getting himself dressed. And then we know, like, right after you get dressed, you brush your teeth. Then we head down and we eat breakfast, and then we put our shoes on. Like, he has a routine. And I did not realize how important that was until you taught me, because I just told you before this call, like, I was gone for a week out of town, and Adam said he completely reverted back to, like, sucking his fingers and crying all the time and acting out. And it's because he had no structure. And it was my husband trying to do it and our nanny trying to do it. And so it wasn't what he was used to. And so I didn't realize how important that was until it was established. And then we took it away. And then he's like, wait, I liked that structure. So
Yes.
yeah, and that's hard, because I'm all about personality types, and I'm an Enneagram 7. And we also talked about this. Like, my personality type is fly by the seat of my pants, like, just be relaxed. I'll figure it out as I go. But I can't parent like that, because my children need that structure. So I had to change, and I had to set a ton of goals for myself so that my children could benefit from that. And it has made such a difference in our home. So, and anyway, I just wanted to go through those as I'd forget which ones you talked about, but yes, so helpful.
Yeah. And I think that's a testament too, because the parents who, like, typically parents are pretty successful with me. Like, they have, average 3 to 5 sessions with me, and the behavior gets good. They understand why they're doing it and what is working, what is not working. And so they're kind of off and running. They don't need to see me for a year or two. But the ones who have the most trouble are the ones who are kind of that fly by the seat of their pants. I don't really want a schedule. And I think it's really important for one, you represent that group, and that you can maintain who you are as an individual, but as a mother, one, that your child's needs supersede that, and that you're willing to make that adjustment in the best interest of your children, and you get to reap the behavioral benefits of that.
And once you understand, because for so long, my thought around that behavior for me, my parenting, was, I want to be a fun mom. Like, I don't want to be the strict mom that's like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do. And so in my mind, I thought that I was helping them and being a fun mom, but I wasn't. It was actually so much confusion for them, and no structure, and they don't know how they're supposed to act. And then it's not fair to the child, because they never know when you're actually going to follow through or when you're just threatening. So they keep getting in trouble over and over, but they don't know, like, when you're going to follow through and when you're not. And so that was the biggest lesson for me, is I'm actually doing them a disservice by parenting how I was.
Right. And I think that's another, probably the second most important point that you are making, is that in today's parenting culture, structure and discipline are viewed as mean, as being too tough on kids, and as squelching individuality and voice. But really, as you've come to understand what that does in wanting to be your child's friend, in wanting them to be happy, you're actually creating stress and anxiety. A lot of times we characterize children who are up and down, kind of all over the place, and who don't listen as high energy children. And really what that is an outcome of a lack of structure, of routine, consistency, and predictability. It's that trust factor that is not there. And as a consequence, the child is confused and it's very stressful for them. And what you have found is the love in providing that consistency and predictability for them. It's a trust factor that they need and that they desire. And I always tell parents, your child is not saying no to you because they really want to resist you. They keep saying no, and they keep resisting you in bigger and bigger ways because they are looking for that limit. They are looking for you for that direction, for you to tell them what to do and to hold to what it is that you're saying, to mean what you say and to follow through. And it brings such comfort and peace and joy too, for that matter.
Yeah. And I didn't honestly believe it until I tried it. So now I'm like the biggest believer. Okay. I'm sorry I interrupted you. What was your next step? Were you on autonomy?
Yeah, we were on autonomy. So we are building relationships that promote independence as opposed to dependence, right?
Because that was big with Jameson too. Like you said, set him up for success. For example, the mornings were the biggest fight because he'd be crying because he wanted me to get him dressed every morning. And I just was like, nope, you got to get yourself dressed. But you told me, set his clothes out the night before and say, here are your clothes. When you wake up, I want you to go to the bathroom and get dressed, and then I'll do your hair. And just that simple thing, like setting him up for success so that he can do it himself, was all the difference.
Exactly. And a lot of times too, even if parents, like you didn't get a whole lot of resistance, surprisingly, but there are parents who live with kids who are a little more resistant, and they have to go a little bit further. So maybe they have a child who won't get dressed, and then they come downstairs and expect to eat breakfast. And really what you would do in that situation is you would say, you know what, it's breakfast time is not going to happen until you go up and get your clothes on. And if you're getting ready to go to school, then say, you know, if you want your breakfast, you better go get dressed and then get your hair brushed and come downstairs to eat. Otherwise, we're packing this stuff up. And then you can talk to your teacher about whether or not you can eat breakfast in the classroom and explain to her why you didn't get breakfast, or, you know, you didn't get your clothes kind of all the way on, that you're still tying your shoes on the way into the classroom. So there are natural consequences in those situations, because I know a lot of parents would be saying, oh, my child would just refuse to get dressed.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. Or
that's
just
what I
down.
liked. I liked that about you, is you were like, let them have natural consequences. So you're not the bad guy. You're like, okay, well, you know, your teacher, you know, like, this is like, okay, well, I remember you said, make, like, if they don't get dressed, you take them to school in their pajamas and let them like know that consequence. And I can guarantee they will get dressed the next day.
They do, especially if they're older children. And I also said, because I was an educator for so many years, educated teachers will support you in that, because they know the struggles that parents have sometimes getting their children up and ready for school. And so if you say, you know, I'm leaving for school, if you're still in your pajamas, you better grab your clothes and then, you know, go explain to your teachers and your friends why you're still in your pajamas. And then all of a sudden you're not the bad guy. And you can just say, well, next time, tomorrow morning, when it's time to get up, you'll think about moving a little faster.
Yeah. And I like that you put it back on them. Like even this morning, Jameson was being slow to put his socks and shoes on in the car. And we were, getting ready to pull up to his school. And I was just like, it wasn't like, if you don't get those on, you're grounded. I just was like, okay, well, if we pull up and you're not ready, you're going to have to explain to your teacher why you were late because you couldn't get your shoes on. And then he was like, oh, I don't want to have to do that. And he got his shoes on,
Exactly. And in that way, parents also can understand that they don't have to be this punishing,
Yes.
That like in the olden days when I grew up, authoritarian type parenting, top down, you don't necessarily have to be that way. It doesn't have to be like that if you just understand that there are natural consequences and be patient with that. Sometimes the consequence doesn't happen immediately, like when you want it to, like when you're trying to hustle your kids out the door. The consequence comes when, we are actually leaving, or the shoes aren't on in the car and it's time to get out, and the child realizes, oh my gosh, this is a little bit embarrassing for me. I don't have my shoes on. I have to get out of the car. I have to explain this to my teacher. And then the next day is when you really see the change in behavior. Similar to the ice cream store. Like a lot of, you did the right thing in the ice cream store. And because you did that, every day after that, you have a child who's a top listener because he's like, oh, when my mom says something, she means it, kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
okay. What was the next step we have after autonomy?
So then we have the boundary issue. And boundaries have to do with having respect for person and property. So property has to do with a child's personal belongings, that it has to do with the respect for the belongings in their home. And then 2, that carries over into the community. At school, they have to learn how to take care of things and be respectful. And then when they go to other people's houses, they have to learn that. And so a lot of times, parents give their kids toys, for example, because kids are supposed to have toys, but there are no limits set around those toys. And so you have a child who's maybe using magnetiles and building something really awesome and beautiful, and then the tower falls down, whatever they built has been crushed, and they completely lose control and they start throwing it. Right. And instead of one being proactive in telling them how to play with them and what the attitude is, like, oh, if your tower falls down, that's not a time to get cuckoo and throw things. It's just a time to either try again or to ask for help, but it's not that big of a deal. So you have expectations of how to treat property, including not just, how to play with it and the attitude about it, but also, too, if kids are taking things out, that they also put it away in the boxes and put it back where it belongs. Because a lot of times kids have their stuff all over the place, all over the house, and so there's no parameters there. Boundaries also comes up, too, in the way children talk and how they communicate. A lot of times, because there is such a high level of listening by parents today, which is a really great thing, children believe that just because they are speaking, that people should not only be listening to them, but they should be responding to them. And once children are out of the infancy dependent stage, they should understand that they need to wait sometimes, that sometimes the needs, feelings, and ideas of others are more important than their own. And this also carries over into school. So if a child is speaking and always responded to and never has to wait, when they go to school, that often becomes a problem because there are, 15, 20, 25 or more other children in the room. And so they need to learn that verbal boundary as well.
I love that. And I like that you said, I love that you said, like opportunities and toys and that stuff is earned. It's not like going into a grocery store is earned. Like you earn that with your behavior. It's not, you don't just automatically, get the toy, or you don't automatically get the ice cream. It's you have to earn it and show me that you're responsible enough. And I loved that. That was a game changer for us too.
Yeah, it is. You can't, a lot of times too, when children get frustrated over something, be it getting what they want, say in the store, if they wanted to buy an apple and you say, no, you're not buying an apple, or they get frustrated because they are playing a game. And something goes wrong with the game or because they're not winning. Parents today, their mindset is to attend to the frustration, right? Which really only seeks to nurture the frustration instead of explaining to them the appropriate way to act in certain situations. There are appropriate responses to different situations, and that is something that children learn to do. So like having a total meltdown over losing in a game of Monopoly is not an appropriate way to respond to that. Okay. And so children need to learn that it is a boundary issue. It's also a little bit of a self-control issue, depending on how big the episode gets. But parents need to help model appropriate responses for different situations, so kids start to learn how to express themselves in ways that are more appropriate to a given situation. And that is how you teach a respect for boundaries and also with people, you know, and so this is how you kind of break down their lives. These are things that we really don't think about and we really don't address. And they are really the cause of so much frustration in parenting because kids are just acting in ways that they know how. You know, they're very impulsive, you know, from a young age, and it needs to be directed in a more constructive way. And that's where the focus really needs to go, not trying to nurture so much the upset, but trying to build skills so that children know how to act right the next time this situation comes around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that was huge. Like you said, before you go into the grocery store, you know, you walk them through how do we act in a grocery store and set that expectation so that they know. And you saying to me, like, you don't give them 10 warnings. They know how to act in a grocery store. You already told them, you know, so having that expectation and setting them up so that they know what's expected and they know the consequence if it doesn't happen, you know, and just laying that foundation has been really helpful for us too.
Yeah. And then every time after that you go in the grocery store, it will be easier and easier because they already know what to do in there. And then finally, the self-control has to do, I break up self-control into two different parts. The thinking part of self-control has to do with problem solving, meaning that a child is presented with a problem, like let's say they are adding and subtracting fractions and they don't know how to do it. So they have to go, oh, this is difficult. The way I'm doing it is not turning out right. I have to figure out alternative ways to do that. And that would be an appropriate way of problem solving as opposed to breaking your pencil, throwing it across the room. And I'm never, you know, taking math for the rest of my life. And then the second part is the self-regulation skills, meaning that it's the emotional part of it. And so when they are presented with a problem and as they are figuring out an alternative way to solve the problem, they are also maintaining a calm, relaxed state as they are thinking their way through the problem. And this is also taught and this is also modeled. So for parents, not only are children looking at the way they problem solve, like when a parent has some issues going on in the house or they have a telemarketer calling them for the 100th time or they can't get the person to come over to fix the dryer. And are you a parent who loses control when things like that happen, right? Or are you even and understanding and somebody who can figure out alternative ways to get the solution that you are looking for? So not only are they looking at you, but they are looking for direction on how to problem solve. So when your children get frustrated, if they are open, if they're not in a full-blown tantrum or yelling at you, because you should walk away when they are doing that and come back to them when they are in a more receptive state. But when they are in that receptive state, then you have to tell them, this is how you walk through this, A, B, C, and D. And as you're doing it, let's stay relaxed. Let's stay breathe. Let's stay with our breath. We're breathing our way through this so that we can be relaxed and figure this out and get to our goal. And this is where, if you practice mindfulness, meditation, families should have a practice of some kind of quiet time built into the day. We are such an on-the-go society, and this is the way it is. I'm not judging it. And also, too, we are constantly plugged in on our phones, on our devices, that we have a really hard time regulating even as adults. Mm-hmm. Sitting with ourselves, sitting with our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts, and being in a quiet place. And I really think that needs to be a built-in practice for healthy emotional living. Just like eating healthy and exercise every day, imperative to your physical health, going to school every day, important for your intellect. I can't say that enough.
Yes. And I feel like with that being said, children are kind of like our greatest mirrors of us, and so that is really helpful to look inside and be like, okay, what do I need to fix? Am I lashing out? Am I yelling? So now they're yelling,
Yeah.
It's just really helpful. And one thing that I did want to talk about was when I came to you, it was for Jameson. And then once I started implementing all of this stuff, Olivia was the one that had a hard time with it because she's used to running the house and she's used to just being able to do whatever she wants because I told Lori, like, she's just so responsible and so capable that she now doesn't like boundaries. So when I'm like, you have to do this, she's like, why? Why do I have to do that? Why can't I do it later? Why do I, And so then we had a whole nother issue, but she was like, well, that's just how she is expressing, her insecurities. It doesn't come out in reverting. It comes out in not having respect for authority. And so keeping those boundaries with her, even though she is having a hard time, she has to trust you as the authority and lay that foundation. So that was really big for us too.
Right. And if you don't mind, Bree, I want to give a little bit of the backstory because I recall when we were on a Zoom for the first time doing our session, that you characterized, Jameson was really the problematic child. And, and you both said, we don't know what's going on because we parent both of our kids the same. And Olivia is like the golden child. Yep. She does everything right. And then what you discovered is that in terms of autonomy, she is a very high functioning child. But in terms of that area of trust and listening, she had gotten the art of choices and compromise and negotiation. But because listening skills weren't developed, when you finally did start giving her direction and asking her to do something, all of a sudden you realized she's not the golden child in every single area.
Yes.
And because that particular need was being skipped over a little bit.
And we were doing her a disservice by letting her pick everything and do everything and kind of be in charge of her own life at 6 years old. Because now when her teacher's like, you got to do this, you got to do that, she's like, well, I don't want to do that right now.
That's right. And that's really the key too, because parents think, oh, this is just happening in the home. And when they go to school or when they go to a friend's house, they'll be different. And the truth is that they're not different. And then a lot of times it does carry over. What happens in the classroom is that if children come in without listening skills, because they're used to having choices all the time and being allowed to question every little thing, that they do, then teachers, they spot this right away because they have a group of 15 or more children in the classroom. They need to have all the listening ears that they can have. And if they don't have that, they know right away that they have to spend quality instruction time teaching listening skills to kids, giving direction, following through. And so it really does consume learning time if kids don't develop that skill at home. So it's very imperative. And then I always say, once your kids grow up, if they haven't learned to listen, they're going to be that adult child who gets their first job. And every time their boss asks them to do something, they question it or say, "Oh, I'll do it later," or "Why don't we do it this way?" They're gonna last about 3 seconds in that job, which is kind of the jokes around the millennials.
Yeah.
It's the stereotype, but it's really what happened developmentally for them, that they missed that aspect of development.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, well, you were a lifesaver for my family, and I can't tell you. And it's really helpful because when behaviors come up, I'm like, okay, which one of those 6 things am I lacking in my parenting? And then I'm like, oh, okay, it's the structure in this area. I feel like I have such a good roadmap now. And we've only done, you guys, a couple sessions together. That's how quickly it changed for us. Only a couple sessions and that's it.
Yeah. And it's like I said too, when those emotional needs are satisfied, then behaviors go away. They went away organically for you. And then your children start functioning at optimal levels in all of those other areas, which is what you are experiencing. Which is why if I have parents who, one, really understand my approach, they follow through with my suggestions, we only have to have a few sessions, and then the whole atmosphere in the household changes. And you get to enjoy your kids now.
Yes, I do. And I told Adam that. I was like, it's not a constant battle anymore. Like, it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
So it's smooth sailing. So if people want to hire you, Lori, the cool thing is she'll do Zoom sessions with you. So we did a package of 3 Zoom sessions, and she can help you individually with your child over Zoom and kind of go over like the foundational things and help you specifically. And that was really helpful for us. But if someone else wants to learn more about you, what would they do?
Well, you can go, I have a website, and it's loriabosch.com. That's LORI, A as in apple, B as in boy, OSCH. And it will tell you all about my services and then my contact information. And my email is loriabosch@gmail.com. And my phone number is 818-310-0623. So you can reach me in any of those ways. And most of what I do now is virtual. But I do in-home visits. Most of the in-home visits I do are for kids who are so out of control that it's a safety issue. But there are some parents who just prefer the in-home. They don't have really impulsive and aggressive behavior at home. They just prefer the in-home visits. And I do both for people who live in the general Los Angeles area. Sometimes I will go to Ventura County. It's a little more expensive when I travel a little further, but I am willing to do that as well.
And honestly, what we decided to do was, and I'm so glad we did it, was you were like, let's try the 3 sessions and you implement what I teach you. And then if you want to do the in-home, we can talk about that. And so that's what we started with. And the behavior changed so quickly. I was like, oh yeah, we don't even need in-home because it like was night and day. And we still have one more session that we get to do. So that was only in 2 sessions. I couldn't believe it. My husband's like, she's a miracle worker.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
But it really is a lot of work. It is implementing what you teach us and making sure that we actually apply it. So,
yes. And typically the first week after the first session is the hardest one. I always say you kind of got to get through the hurricane because there has been so much inconsistency inconsistency typically when families are contacting me, and then when parents do actually, implement the suggestions and hold to it, there is an increase in behavior, and the kids do that because they really want to test to see if you really are meaning what you say this time. And then once they see that you're not going to change your mind, the behavior just slowly starts to diffuse. And usually within a day or two, you see dramatically different behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you guys saw. And to your credit, Bree, and to Adam as well, you guys were open. You did not get defensive. You just said, oh, it was a clear wake-up call for you.
Oh, yeah.
And you just did it full force and with energy. A lot of times parents, they get defensive. They can feel guilty too, and then they have a hard time kind of executing the suggestions as prescribed, and it can create other problems or they become in need of some extra follow-up. But when you're open and willing, that's when you're going to get the best results from me.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, I obviously don't know what I'm doing. I need to hire an expert. I'm like, whatever you tell me to do, Lori, I'll do, because I need an expert here. So you know what you're doing. You have 30 years of experience. Like, you know exactly what you're doing. You know what works. So I'm like, I'm going to do everything she tells me. And it worked. And it was awesome. So
yeah.
And oh, what?
Ahead.
No, you go.
I just wanted, just to be fair, a lot of times, I want to come across to people as knowledgeable and very polished, and I do that to give them as much as I can in the most effective way. But the truth is that I learned so much of what I did through making mistakes with kids, because I've been working with kids with mild to severe behavior problems my entire career. I've had a fascination with it my whole life. So I studied it both formally and informally, but it was through all of the mistakes that I made that I was able to come up and to really become an expert in this area. And I always want parents to not be so hard on themselves.
Yes.
You're doing the best you can with the knowledge that you have. And so now you have a different set of information and knowledge, and now you can do better with that. But to try, like, you never, Bree, you didn't, at least not outwardly, you didn't seem to feel guilty. You were just like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. Now I know it. And you were just fully enthusiastic. And so that kind of attitude is really helpful, because I know there are parents who really beat themselves up about how their kids are acting, and they think that they're not good parents. And
I think that's what, like, why people feel that way is because they don't know what to do to fix it. So I think when you gave me the tools, I was so hopeful. I was just excited. I was like, okay, now I have a roadmap and I have the support. Like, you were checking in on me. You're like, how is Jameson's behavior? How are you feeling? So I didn't feel alone. And I was just so excited to implement it that I like couldn't even feel guilty, because I'm like, it's going to change. Everything's going to be better.
Yes. And that is another thing that anybody who does want to contact me, I want people to be successful. And after our session, I do ask parents to update me throughout the week so they can tell me what is working. And if things are not working, I can provide them with guidance, either via email, or if it's like I had a client yesterday who was making absolutely no progress. And so I got them on the phone and we had a short conversation. It was about mealtime, and it was just a god-awful mess even after our first session. And now they are just right back on track, and they're getting the results that they want. So I'm right with you every step of the way.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Lori. And I'm going to link all of Lori's information, her website, her Instagram, her phone number. Everything will be in the podcast notes. So if you want to look that up, that'll be easier if you don't have a pen and paper. And you can hire her yourself if you'd like. But hopefully you got something from this episode that was helpful for you and your family to bring harmony and peace and enjoy motherhood, enjoy your children, see them for who they are and their amazing qualities, and it'll be a blessing to your life too. So thank you for joining us, Lori.
Thank you so much for having me, Bree. It's been a true pleasure and a lot of fun. You are one of the funnest clients I have.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Energy.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. If you liked the content and want to hear more, remember to hit that subscribe button and write a review. As a small business owner, I appreciate it more than you know. If you are looking for a program to help with self-confidence, to lose weight, get in shape, and work on your mental, physical, and emotional health, check out my training programs on www.bodybybree.com. My team and I help to hold you accountable through the Body by Bree app, where you log in to see all your workouts, custom meal plan made specifically for you and your needs, and communication through the messenger. You are never alone when you're on the Body by Bree training program. Click the link in the show notes to get more information on how to transform your life from the inside out.